I'm gonna be reading this Outlander. Is that lady, I think. So bear with me if I mispronounce shit. Okay. Part 1, Inverness, 1945. Chapter 1, A New Beginning. It wasn't a very likely place for disappearance, at least at first glance. Mrs. Bard was like a thousand other Highland bed and breakfast establishment in 1945. Clean and quiet, with fading floral wallpaper, gleaming floors, and a coin-operator hot water glacier in the lavatory. Mrs. Bard herself was squat and easygoing. It made no objections to flank lining her tiny rose spring parlor with dozens of books and papers with which he always traveled. I met Mrs. Bard in the front hall on my way out. She stopped me with a pudgy hand on my arm, patted at my hair. "Dear me, Mrs. Randall, ye cannot go out like that. Here, just let me tuck that bit in for ye. There, that's better. Ye know, my cousin was telling me about a new perm she tried. Comes out beautiful and holds like a dream. Perhaps you should try that kind next time." I hadn't the heart to tell her that the waywardness of my light brown curls was strictly the fault of nature, not due to any redirection on the part of the permanent wave manufacturers. Her own tightly massical waves suffered from no such perversity. "Yes, I'll do that, Mrs. Bard," I lied. "I'm just going down to the village to meet Frank. We'll be back for tea." I ducked out the door and down the path before she could detect any further defects in my undisciplined appearance. After 4 years as a Royal Navy nurse, I was enjoying this escape from uniforms and rationing by indulging in brightly printed light cotton dresses totally unsuited for rough walking through the heather. Not that I had originally planned to do a lot of that. My thoughts ran more on the lines of sleeping late in the morning and long, lazy afternoons in bed with Frank, not sleeping. However, it was difficult to maintain the proper mode of languorous romance with Mrs. Bard industriously hovering away outside our door. That must be the dirtiest bit of carpet in the entire Scottish Highlands. Frank had observed that morning as we lay in bed listening to the furious war vacuum in the hallway. Nearly as dirty as our landlady's mind, I agreed. And perhaps we should have gone to Brighton after all. I live in Michigan, Brighton. If it's pronounced differently in English, sorry. We had chosen the Highlands as a place to holiday before Frank took up his appointment as a history professor at Oxford, on the grounds that Scotland had been somewhat less touched by the physical horrors of war than the rest of Britain, was less susceptible to the frantic post-war gravity that affected more popular vacation spots. And without discussing it, I think we both felt that it was a symbolic place to re-establish our marriage. We had been married and spent a 2-day honeymoon in Highland shortly after the outbreak of war 7 years before. A peaceful refuge in which no rediscovered each other. We thought, not realizing that golf and fishing are Scottish land's most popular outdoor sports, gossip is the most popular indoor sport. And when range as much as it does here in Scotland, doesn't say here, people spend a lot of time indoors. That just makes more sense if you say here to me. "Where are you going?" I asked, as Frank swung his feet out of bed. "I hate the dear old thing to be disappointed in us," he answered, sitting up on the side of the ancient bed. He bounced gently up and down, creating a piercing, acidic squeak. The hovering in the hall stopped abruptly. After a minute or two of bouncing, he gave a loud, theatrical groan and collapsed backward with a twang of protesting screams. I giggled helplessly into the pillow so as not to disturb the breathless silence outside. Frank waggled, more like wiggled than waggled, his eyebrows at me. "You're supposed to moan ecstatically, not giggle," he muttered in a whisper. "She'll think I'm not a good lover. You have to keep it up for longer if you expect ecstatic moans." I answered. 2 minutes doesn't deserve any more than a giggle. "Inconceivable little wench. I came here for a rest, remember? Lazybones, you'll never manage the next branch on your family tree unless you show a bit more industry than that." Frank's passion for genealogy, I think that's how you pronounce it, was yet another reason for choosing the Highlands. According to one of the 50 scraps of paper he hung to and fro, some tiresome ancestor of his had something to do with something or other in this region back in the middle of the 18th or was it 17th century. If I end as a childish stub on my family tree, it will undoubtedly be the fault of our untiring hostess out there. After all, we've been married almost 8 years. Little Frank Jr. will be quite legitimate without being conceived in the presence of a witness. If he's conceived at all, I said pessimistically. We had been disappointed yet again the week before leaving for our Highland retreat. With all this bracing fresh air and healthy diet, how could we help but manage here? Dinner the night before had been herring fried, lunch had been herring pickled, and the pundits had now ruffled up the syrup strongly indicated that breakfast was to be herring kippered. This year he contemplated on an encore performance for the edification of Mrs. Bird. I suggested you better get dressed. Aren't you meeting that person at 10? Rev. Dr. Michael Wakefield, victor of the local parish, was to provide some vibrating, fascinating baptismal registers for Frank's inspection, not to mention a glaring protest that he might have unearthed some moldering army dispatches or some such that mentioned a notorious ancestor. "What's the name of the great-great-great-great-grandfather of yours again?" I asked. "The one that mucked about here during one of the risings. I can't remember if it was Willie or Walter. Actually, it was Jonathan." Frank took my late descendants and family history placidly, but remained always on guard, ready to seize the slightest expression of inquisitiveness as an excuse for telling me all facts known to date about the early Reynolds and their connections. So I assumed I hate it when my eye skips the line. The next line also ends with the. What's it? About the William Reynolds and their connection. I assume the fervid gleam of the fanatic lecturer as he buttoned his shirt. Jonathan Riverton Randall Riverton for his mother's uncle, a minor knight from Texas. He was, however, known by a rather dashing nickname of Black Jack, something he acquired in the army probably during the time he was stationed here. I flopped face down in the bed and affected to snore, ignoring me. Frank went on with his scholarly exercises, or whatever that means. And he bought his commission in the mid-30s, 1730s, that is, and served as captain of dragoons, according to those old letters cousin May sent me. He did quite well in the army, a good chance for a second son, you know. His younger brother followed just as well by the becoming a gray? What the hell is that? But I haven't found out much about him yet. Anyway, Jack Randall was highly recommended by the Duke of Sandringham for his activities before and during the 45th Second Jacobite Rising, He amplified for the benefit of the ignorant amongst his audience, namely me. My prize Charlie and that lot. I'm not entirely sure that Scott realized I lost that one. I interrupted, sitting up and trying to do my hair. Distinctly heard the barman at the pub last night refer to us as sexual yes. I think I pronounced it wrong. Well, why not, Frank elaborated. It only means Englishmen after all, or at worst, Outlander, and we're all of that. I know what it means. It was the tone I objected to. Frank searched through the bureau drawer for a belt. It was thus annoying because I told him the ale was weak. I told him the true Highland brew requires an old boot to be added to the vat, and the final product to be strained through a well-worn undergarment. That accounts for the amount of the bill. Well, I purchased it a little bit more tactfully than that, but only because Gaelic language hasn't got a specific word for drawers. I reached for a pair of my own interior. Why not? Did the ancient Gauls not wear undergarments? Weird. You've never heard that old song about what a Scotman wears underneath his kilt? Assuming not gents' knee-length strap-ins, I said dryly. Perhaps I'll go out in search of a local knitwear whilst you're cultivating whiskers and ask him. Well, do try not to get arrested, Claire. The Dean of St. Giles College wouldn't like it. Wouldn't like it.